Hello everyone, this is Royston over here. Thank you once again for downloading the high quality stock analysis checklist. So this checklist will be very useful for you guys in identifying high quality stocks. So how do you actually use this checklist? In this very short video tutorial, I'll be showing you how you are actually able to find the relevant data to input into this checklist to determine at the end of the day if the counter that you're looking at is indeed of a high quality nature. So how this checklist is being done is it is actually segregated into two components. One component is the area whereby you need to manually put in the data. Okay, so we'll talk about that later. And the second component is the scoring factor. Now you don't actually need to touch this portion. Once you have actually inputted this data over here, the scores will actually be auto-populated. So at the end of the day, you will have a final score for your counter that you are looking at based on the data that you have inputted over here. We'll touch about that shortly. So at the end of the day, you'll be able to identify if the counter that you're looking at is an excellent counter for you to be purchasing. Is it a good counter for you to be doing a little bit more research, or is it just average, or last but not least actually mediocre, which you can just forget about it. Okay, so with that, let's talk a little bit on how you can actually find the data over here. Now, these are all pretty common metrics that you can be looking at. Okay, these are not rocket science metrics that you probably would not have heard of. These are probably very common financial metrics that you probably would have heard of already. Based on my experience and knowledge, I've already identified these are all the relevant financial metrics that you should be looking at in order to identify a high quality stock. Now, most of you will probably be familiar with these financial metrics, but the problem over here is to be able to find a single source that will allow you to easily input all this data in terms of its current value, 5 years historical average, as well as the forward estimate. So not many platforms out there are able to provide, or not many free platforms out there are able to provide you with this kind of information, except one. So this is basically what I'm going to highlight to you guys, and I'm going to share with you this one particular platform that you are actually able to use, and it is all free of charge to be able to identify all this relevant data to be inputted in, and I'll bring you through step by step how I'm actually going to do it, or how I'm actually going to input or use that platform's data to find out if Apple Inc. is indeed a high quality stock. Okay, so bear with me. That particular platform is actually called Koyfin. Now, if you type it in, it's actually app.koyfin.com. So this is basically how the website will actually look like. There's actually quite a lot of very interesting features over here that you can play around, and this actually is all free. Of course, there's an upgraded version whereby you'll be able to get more data, but I believe that the free version is good enough for most of you guys, good enough for us to be able to retrieve the relevant data to input into our high quality stock analysis checklist. So this is basically the Koyfin platform. Now, I'm going to dive right in and show you guys how I'm able to retrieve certain data from this platform to fill up this checklist. As you can see, this checklist is being color coded. So what does the colors actually mean for each of this Excel tab? Now, if it's being color coded in light blue shade over here, you'll be able to actually retrieve that information from the historical graph segment of Koyfin. So we come over to the graph, hit the historical graph portion, and this is where you'll be able to add in the data series. Right, data series. And as you can see over here, I've already added in quite a number of data series that is relevant to what I want to be looking out for. So you can just do this one time exercise, and then save your template so that the next time you want to be evaluating the next stock, it'll be very simple. So I'll be running through with you how I actually get those information over here based on the data series that I've already inputted. So this is basically all this information is where you can actually find from this historical graph segment of the Coifin platform. Now, those highlighted in light shade of yellow, okay, over here, a few of them, this is basically where you can retrieve the info from the analyst estimate segment. So where exactly it is, come over here to the analyst estimates, hit on actual and consensus, and basically the data over here will allow you to fill in the relevant information in this yellow areas. Okay, I will actually go through with you very shortly later on. And last but not least, the cells in brown, those are basically information that's not required to be filled up. So you can just leave that alone. So the only information that you need to retrieve from the Coifin platform are those shaded in yellow, light shade of blue, as well as light shade of yellow. And again, all these are being auto-populated, so you don't have to do anything about it for the scores. Okay, let's dive right in to find exactly how can I actually retrieve some of this information for Apple Inc. So the first one that I need to find out is basically some of this profitability ratios. So let's go over to the Coifin platform. Okay, and let's also just basically do quick. All right. So we can head over to our graphs, head over to historical graph, and as you can see, these are all some of the data series that I've already inputted inside. I would actually show you guys how to actually be inputting this data, the requirements, all right, in a separate Excel tab. So you can refer to them to actually be inserting in this. So the first thing is basically we are looking at gross margin. So over here, you can see that I've already inputted gross margin, gross profit margin over here. And all you have to do is basically to change this to LTM, last 12 months, and shows the mean ratio. Okay, for the statistical band, show the mean average ratio. So this is basically what you need to do. So for gross margins, we can see over here. Okay, let's open up. So basically you can be hiding all these charts and just focus on the one that you want to be looking at. Just hit show. And you can see over here that the gross margin, so we want to be looking at the 5 years average. So we change this to, let's say, 5 years. 5 years. So currently, the Apple's gross profit margins on a last 12-month trailing basis is 43.06 and the mean is 39.84. So this is basically what you need to be inputting. So very simple over here, 43.06. And this is basically 39.84. Okay, so that's basically what you need to be imputing in. All right, imputing in. So let's just do a little bit of adjustments here. Okay, slight adjustments, right? Okay, let's move on to EBIT margin. Okay, EBIT margin, which is over here. So again, you can be closing this or hiding this chart, and you can be showing this EBIT margin percentage chart. So EBIT right now for Apple is at 29.41, 29.41, and the average, 5 years average is at 27.09. Okay, so we will ignore this area first. Once we have filled up all these cells, then we'll move on to the next area, which is to fill up the light yellow cells. So next one, net margin, net income margin. So we hide this and focus on net income margin. 4.56, 3.16. Now, next one is return on assets, 19.57. And the average is at 15.28. Return on equity, 147. Okay, very high ROE. And 92.05, that's the mean. ROC, return on capital, 39.29, and the 5 years average is at 25.93. So you have filled out all this information very quickly, very easily using the Koyfin platform. Next, let's move on to the valuation metrics. So we can look at the price earnings. Now on the last 12 months trailing basis, the price earnings multiple is at 27.4, and the 5 years historical average is at 24.8. Price to free cash flow. Alright, price to free cash flow right now is at 26.1, and the last mean average was 21.7. Next, we move on to our cash flow and share repurchase metrics. So over here, these are mainly ratios or multiples. Here we are putting in the absolute figure, free cash flow. So we want to be looking at free cash flow for Apple. So it's at 97.5, the last 12 months basis, 97.5, and 5 years historical average is at 78.8. You can see that the company has actually been growing its free cash flow pretty consistently versus the last 5 years. Now we want to be looking at share repurchase as well. So this company has actually been purchasing 94.1 billion. Alright, 94.1 billion shares, historically 79.9. Massive share repurchase by Apple. Okay, let's move on to net debt. Net debt, again, this is an absolute figure. So the net debt over here is negative, which means to show that the company is actually in a net cash position. There's actually more cash in the company than the amount of debt that it has. So this is a good sign. Okay, you want to be seeing negative figure over here, which shows that the company is not highly geared. In fact, it is in a very comfortable cash position. Minus 54.3, 5 years average, minus 85. So there's actually a decline in terms of the overall net debt position, but still a net cash position, it's pretty decent. Next, we'll move on to the total debt to equity ratio. Okay, total debt to equity ratio. So over here, it's pretty high, 195.9. So typically for such high ratios, it's actually a red flag, but in the case of Apple, this is going to be pretty unique scenario because of its low equity base. That's why it actually results in a very high ratio, unusually high debt to equity ratio for this company. Okay, but as long as it is in a net debt position or net cash position, so to speak, this is not a critical issue at all for us. Okay. Next, let's move on to the growth metrics. So total revenue, CAGR. So over the last 5 years, how much have revenue been growing on an annualized basis each year? Okay, so this is something that we want to be finding out. Total revenue, 5 years. So the company has actually been growing its revenue pretty consistently at a clip of about 10% each year over the past 5 years. So this is very decent. So 10.13, that's basically the last figure, 5 years average, and on an average basis, right, it is 8.2. Okay, gross profit. Let's check out gross profit. CAGR is at 12.67. Last 5 years is at 8.79. So it is growing at a faster clip, which is good. Net income. Okay, net income, last 5 years, so we close this off first, and we go net income, 13.5. 5 years historical average, 9.6. So all so far so good. Cash from operations. So we want to be making sure that its cash is also growing in line with its profitability. So that's also pretty important. So let's take a look. Cash from operations. Let's close this first and take a look at cash from operations. 10.8 and 6.6. So very easily we have filled up all this information. So like I mentioned earlier, once you have actually input in all this data series, you can be very quickly finding the relevant data to be inputting into your high quality stock analysis checklist. So we have found the data that we want for all this relevant information based on current value as well as 5 years historical average. Now we need to be looking at the forward estimate. So we need to be looking at what the street is actually targeting moving forward for this various financial metrics. So what you need to do is come over to the analyst estimates, hit the actual and consensus. So this is basically where you'll be able to find all the relevant data with regards to what you're looking at for. Okay, so for example, gross margin. Okay, gross margin. So we can come over here, gross margins, and you can take a look that Apple currently, based on the last reported gross margin, is at 43.31. Okay, so there's going to be some slight discrepancy between this figure as well as this figure that you have inputted in, because this is based on the last 12 months trailing basis. This is based on the last financial year, okay, calendar year. So what we need is basically to put in the forward estimates. This is basically what the street is estimating for the company moving forward, 1 year forward. So this is basically the tab that we are interested in to fill up the information in these light yellow cells. So 43.3 is basically what we want to be putting in. 43.3. So pretty similar to what it is currently generating in terms of gross margin. So not much of a difference. So we have gross margins. Let's move on to find EBIT margins. Okay, EBIT adjusted margins, 29.03. And then followed by net margin, 24.2. Next, let's take a look at the price earnings 1 year forward estimate by the street. So you can come over to here, this area, price earnings adjusted, 27.1. 27.1. Free cash flow. Let's take a look. Do we have the free cash flow information? Okay, free cash flow over here. Apple is expected to generate a free cash flow amount of about 97.3 million in the coming financial year. So we put in 97.3. Okay, so we are left with the growth area. So let's take a look. Total revenue. So what is the forward, 1 year forward estimated total revenue that the company is looking to grow? So let's take a look. Sales. Okay, so moving forward for the year 2023, this financial year, it is probably going to be witnessing a slight decline in terms of its sales. So negative 1.39. Negative 1.39. So slight decline in terms of sales growth. Gross profit. Gross profit also a slight decline, minus 1.33. Net income. Adjusted, minus 5.6. And last but not least, cash from operations. Okay, cash from operations year-on-year change, minus 9. So there you have it. Basically, able to easily, very easily use the data from the Koifin platform to fill up all this relevant information for your stock analysis checklist. So once you have inputted all this data over here, you'll be able to see the final score for the counter that you're looking at. And in the case of Apple, it actually has a final score of 82, which is actually pretty decent, okay, in the good range. So this is definitely a high quality company that you can actually be evaluating a little bit more. So there you have it, a very nifty Excel checklist that you can be using to find and evaluate company and see if they are of a high quality nature. I hope that this pretty short video, alright, about 20 minutes video tutorial is actually useful in helping you to use this high quality stock analysis checklist more efficiently. Okay, thank you very much again for downloading this checklist, and I look forward to having more interaction with you guys ahead. See you guys.